business using an address other than your home, it may read
around. That has been Dispenza, the guy that's suing AEW for Moxley throwing him down. This was 16 years ago.
Wow.
He was a fucking high school kid. So I'm assuming he's around 50 at this point. Maybe that contributes to why he was a little more fragile. They worked their asses off. Fans loved it. Both teams were better off after it was over. So, again, you know, they're booked. Okay, they got a street fight. And we've ended up giving them 6 minutes. And I don't know. Storm, I'm sure. I don't know what Rude's experience was. And the guys from the UK, I don't know if they were doing street fights then, but they just say, go out and have a fucking street fight for 6 minutes. And boom. So they had to, you don't just go out there and hit each other with a bunch of shit that's laying around. Work spots with the gimmicks so they mean something. Gimmick them so they don't hurt anybody. Do something so it gets a pop and pays off because the heel has gotten his comeuppance rather than just somebody got hit with something hard. So, and they were very receptive to that because, hey, we want to get over. The only ones that were laying on their ass was most of the high-priced fucking talent over 50. Anywho, so that makes some sense, right?
Yes.
So then, Team 3D versus Matt Morgan and Kurt Angle in a tables match with Bobby Lashley on color. I didn't even remember this happened. And I actually don't even remember what happened. And once again, no problems with talent being on time. I think everyone knew to behave, especially at this set of tapings. So they've just been dressed down. Bubba set the vast majority of this up as these newfangled table matches are his specialty, but I gave him the finishing sequence, and Bubba nor anyone else had any problem with that. The dust-up with Lashley and Angle worked was a good tease for the future. The match was as good as a tables match can be, even though I'm not a fan, because the inherent problems, i.e. no false finishes, and the difficulty of getting the fans in anything not involving the table. However, as they were going home on the last table tease, Kurt was to pull the table out from under Morgan, but his hip went out as he tried, and this was when Kurt was packing himself in ice after every goddamn match. And although Matt didn't go through it, his leg hit the legs. I buzzed the ref from the truck to keep him going. While we got the replacement table after a few minutes of confusion, we got it and they got back on track. Editing will fix the finished product, but a lesson was learned that furniture doesn't always work with us. Kurt was in the floor afterward being worked on by the trainer for his hip, which was the same thing that was hurt after last month's pay-per-view, but he was up and walking shortly afterwards.
There was such a big outcry from wrestling fans around this period of time because this is when WWE decided not to bring Kurt Angle back, and the rumors that at least came out were that they thought he was, one bad night away from death, and they didn't want another death on their hands. The roster, however you want to phrase it. What concerns did you guys have in TNA? Because he came in there and had some real physical matches and the stuff with him and Samoa Joe, a bunch of stuff. Were there the same concerns in TNA, and did they start to dissipate? I mean, what was it like with Kurt Angle around this period of time?
He had the complete opposite problem that most of the high-priced WWF veterans had, and that most of them wanted to sit around on their fucking ass and not do shit for their money, but he wanted to work too hard. He was killing himself, and not even with the substances, which were a byproduct of, he was killing himself, but he was just, that's why people win Olympic gold medals, probably, because they're just determined and they're driven and they're whatever. He was not going to let anything stop him from doing the goddamn, anything he wanted to do, anything he needed to do, anything he was called for to do. Every night after the pay-per-views, he would be laid on the ground with bags of ice taped to his shoulder, his knees, his hips, his back, neck. And this is at a period of time also when it's no secret that Part of the reason why Jeff wasn't there anymore was because Kurt's marriage had not gone well, and Karen had been a part of the whole kerfluffle, and Kurt had personal issues and was also, obviously, as he's talked about. So I'm not trying to bury him because I love Kurt Angle. He's an amazing athlete. We always had nothing but wonderful things to say to each other, and I loved working with him, but he was going to fucking kill himself. He was going to break something irreparably, or something, so not even with the personal problems, just, and I'm like, you know what I mean? They saw him laying there in ice, packed in ice after every match, and that's why, again, I was saying, with this guy, do you want to book him a little less on fucking television? Just so that he wouldn't have to work so hard so much, and they, sometimes tried to do that, but at the same point, when that's what I was trying to do at the time, not trying to be the savior of goddamn. Terry Taylor didn't want to say, he and Russo were buddies anyway because of the whole God thing. They have the same delusion, and they rode in the same car together. Me and Dutch, I'd look in my rearview mirror, I'd see Russo and Terry Taylor in the car on the way to fucking Orlando, and I'm like, how does Terry put up? But he wanted his job.
That's why.
And
that's how he put up.
And so he wasn't going to argue. Everybody else, and they needed it or they depended on it or whatever. But I was not going to just bullshit everybody and say that the top guys were working hard when they weren't, or that the matches that are booked should have been pulled off better when they couldn't have been, or whatever the case. And sometimes with Kurt, I thought they should have said, hey, we can certainly back him off to working one time a month for the summer or the winter or the spring or the fall, or sometime, and just do angles on TV or whatever and light up. But they, Russo loved to have all stars working on TV to weave his Shakespearean magic. And there's other comments on this television program that this is where Samoa and Homicide had a bad match on the pay-per-view, and they did better on their TV match and some stuff afterwards. But the problem was that Samoa Joe at the time had been diminished. He'd already had that argument with Nash and etc. They had him wearing the fucking pants. They had him remember when he had the tribal face tattoo? Were you even watching this shit?
I didn't really watch it much, but I remember seeing it because I had to see it because I was a fan of Samoa Joe before then.
Well, yes, and he had to come out with fire dancers at one time, and the fire dancers, I think one of the members of the fire dancers he was like related to, but at the same time he came up to me, he's like, I'm from California, I have a college education, and now they want me to look like a goddamn Bamba the Jungle Boy, right? So they were down on Joe, and he did when he got unmotivated because of disrespect or lack of anybody giving a shit really of what he was doing or just doing his stupid shit. He'd gain a little weight or he'd slow down.
What if we could create a nice world where a problem is resolved before it even becomes one?
So they had talked to him. And I said, in the past year, Joe's gone through his baby face to heel, an in-ring layoff due to storyline, a change in his gimmick, the birth of his baby, and other professional and personal changes. And it's possibly just lost focus and or motivation. His renewed fire and performance on Monday and Tuesday after being talked to hopefully bears this out, because I believe he has a lot to offer. I'm not sure the new pants he's wearing are flattering, and the facial tattoo wears off in any kind of competitive match. This may need to be addressed. I wonder if we could tell him that the most important thing is his physical performance, and we could adjust his look if he's not comfortable with it. Hint, hint.
Very diplomatic.
Pope De Niro, old Elijah Burke, had a good debut with Consequences Creed, who's now the New Day fellow, Xavier Woods.
And you had Elijah Burke, obviously, in OVW.
Yeah, well, we brought him into. He had never wrestled before he came to one of our tryout camps, and I think he's the only guy, maybe that we ever took that didn't have any wrestling training whatsoever in a tryout camp. I said I've always found him a hard worker with a lot of charisma. Blah, blah, blah. But anyway, there's much more, but we're running long. But we will get into some interesting things over the next few weeks, including, well, our friend Sheikh Bashir that had been canceled previously. Poor old Sean Daivari that had been kicked off SmackDown and the UPN network. He comes in.
See, I don't remember that. They brought him in as Sheikh Bashir?
Yes, I think it was Abdul Bashir, wasn't it?
Did Russo see Martin Bashir on TV? Is that where he got it from?
Well, no. They had a group of the world elite, which constituted Eric Young, because he was from Canada, Bashir, because he was from wherever they were saying he's from, Persia, I don't fucking know, the guys from England, because Russo's like, oh, they're all foreigners, so they got to be heels in a group together. Oh, this was all fun. This was leading up to the big finish between me and TNA. But anyhow, is it odd that you should be asked to turn in comments? But no, that's not odd. But same thing is I found every time you turn shit like this in, somebody don't fucking like it. And you're just hurting people's feelings.
And you never heard anything back, right? It was a one-way thing. You sent in your notes.
Oh yeah, no, they don't like grade it and send it back when you misspelled, and no, they. And again, everybody knew that it was everybody, and they had brought Scott D'Amore, I think, was back at that point. They brought in some new agents. I think Simon Diamond. His real name's Pat Kenny. Had 18 names. I like various of these guys. I think they tried to. I tried to talk them into that time into bringing D'Lo Brown in. Maybe they did, but a lot of those guys didn't have as much experience and hadn't been in the business long enough as the guys that were in the main events, as I've illustrated with some of these names. So they wouldn't listen to them, and these guys didn't want to tell them what to do. Which is, I've also illustrated in these notes, you were expected to at some point tell these guys what to fucking do. And at the same time, they wanted their jobs. They didn't want to tell Dixie that her pet, little Shakespearean writer there was a goddamn imbecile. It was fucking her show up. And the boys, especially the main event guys, would just do what they wanted anyway. So we just tried to come up with shit that was palatable for them and still get to the same place they were supposed to. Whereas the younger talent that still may be in a prominent position but didn't have the stroke, they would just sit there and look at me like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? This doesn't make any sense. And then we'd figure something out. As long as Jeff was there, it kept me and Russo from having not only to coexist and actually work directly with each other, asking each other back and forth questions, but it also gave an ultimate authority to go to when something didn't make sense, and I had to tell Jeff, as a guy who knew the talent can't figure out how to do this. Or remember the famous incident where the first question everybody asked me was, how can we have a finish to this match when there was never actually a start to the fucking match? The bell never rings to start the match. And Russo's helpful suggestion was, nobody will notice. But that's the only thing that anybody noticed every time I gave it to him. So you'd go to Jeff and he'd say, do it the right way. But that was gone. So everybody knew it was going to be me trying to put these matches together that I'd already been given by a complete imbecile that didn't understand that they couldn't be done and the stories were dreck. So it was a matter of time.
Other than that call after he first left, did you hear from Jeff at all during this period of time, or was Jeff completely kind of not talking to anyone?
No, then he was wherever he was at. Because he knew it was, at that point, a lost cause anyway. He was probably one of the ones that knew that Hogan was coming, I would think, first, so.
You know, in the end, we would all hear you say various things and know what you think about Dixie Carter. And she certainly proved herself to be incompetent, I think. She was able to fund the thing with her dad's money, but she thought she knew it. She thought she got it. She thought she knew the right people, and nothing ever worked. Were you already feeling that way about her at this period of time? Were you already thinking, you know, the problem, like, it's never going to be better because we have Dixie here. It's not even just about Russo. It's just about her.
Well, not really, because until this time period, I mean, she would show up. She wouldn't even come to all the TVs, but she'd be at a lot of them. And her big thing was getting there in time to get her makeup done and her hair done. And she would go out and sit in the impact zone and take pictures with the fans, and sometimes even holding the belt so she can take pictures with the fans. And yes, she's walking around and you don't go up and go, well, fuck you, you know, or whatever. You're, hey, Dixie, but I really had very little interaction with her for the first 2.5 years, because otherwise than try to be polite in the hallway and saying hello, she didn't really interfere with what we were doing on TV day. I don't know what she was like in the office in Nashville for the people that went there. And I never thought about sitting down and having a long conversation with her, because I knew that she didn't understand wrestling. And why am I, other people wanted to talk to her and get friendly with her because then she's the boss and, she will continue to employ them. I dealt with Jeff. I was working for Jeff. I'm not there to be nice to people. I'm there to work and do this fucking show. So I would nod and say hi and pass comments with Dixie, but I never had occasion to interact with her that much. And it was one of those deals where I need 5 minutes or 5 years. Anything in between ain't going to do either one of us any good. And she had been made aware of the fact that I would just as soon have run over fucking Russo with a pickup truck and then backed over him to pick up the goddamn unbroken pieces from the very start. And after I gave my notice, shout out that, and continued to show up there, I told her at the start, I'll work with him. I ain't going to beat him up. I'll work with him, but that's it. We ain't going to be friends.
To understand the world, you need the truth. That's why we follow the fact.
That's funny.
Friends. And otherwise than that, until this time period where she realized she's getting reports of all the problems with talent and everybody's got a bad attitude and people are showing up late or don't want to do this. And fucking Jeff is gone and Dutch is gone. And all of a sudden she realizes, wait a minute. They were actually kind of running this thing because, Russo comes up with all this bullshit storylines. But if the guys don't want to do what he wants them to do, they, instead of just doing what they want to do, we need to have somebody else to figure out how to make it palatable or talk them into it or do something. And that's the service that all the people she let go were performing.
Do you think, in her heart of hearts, if she does indeed have one, do you think she realizes she was wrong? Do you think she understands how important Dutch Mantel was to the company? And that you were, for a time, to the company? Do you think she realizes all these years later, as much as she may personally like Vince Russo, that maybe he wasn't the person whose creative vision she should let her company follow? What do you think?
I don't think that people ask her every 3 months just to keep track of, how she feels now, but I haven't ever heard that she's ever realized that Russo was a fucking imbecile. And it just did damage after damage. And, maybe she knows that Hogan and Bischoff were a mistake. She might have figured that out, but I think old Vinny Roo was smooth enough to convince her that he knew what the fuck he was doing. And she's never abdicated it, or whatever the correct term would be, and I don't know if she realizes that, she could have been a big, important part of the history of wrestling in a positive way if she had provided the money and, for all intents and purposes after that, just stayed out of the fucking way and don't ever make any suggestions. But because she fancied herself, she's like the wrestling version of that Ice Barbie, that Christy Gnome that dresses up in costumes for photo ops. She would come as the owner of the company. She'd come and run the knockouts out of the makeup chair to get her makeup done to go out and sit with the marks. She wanted to be on Real Housewives of Nashville or some shit. She fancied herself some type of rich, hotty-toddy celebrity in Nashville and has that kind of outlook. So she thought she had to put herself in there somewhere just to make sure everybody knew she was there. But if she'd have just stayed out of the goddamn way and provided the money, and maybe it would have been a different story.
Do you think it would have worked out better for Jeff around this period of time if he had just plowed her with wine?
Oh, if you had put a period after just plowed her, I think you mean plied her.
I don't know.
I think you mean plied her with wine, but that's the thing. Jerry Jarrett, bless him, he's gone now, but he swore up and down to me. He was laughing. He said, Russo's fucking her. Because he was the first one to have to go through that. He quit the company that he started to not have to deal with Vince Russo and didn't speak to his own son for years after that. And he was convinced that Russo was fucking her. I said, no, of all the rumors, Jerry, I promise you, not because I think she wouldn't, but because I know that he wouldn't have the balls to. But Jerry was convinced of it. Is that because I said, you were there at the start. Why does she think that he should be involved in anything?
It's like the Vince Shawn Michaels rumors from people who were there. When they say that they thought there was something going on, it's because of the same kind of attitude. I can't understand any other reason why this person will be tolerated. Unless they were fucking, nothing else seems logical. You tell that person to fuck off. And, it turns out when they went to, I guess, what's the story? Jeff went to Dixie for PR because she was a Nashville PR person. And then she hooked him up with her dad and Panda Energy. And I guess the real thing was she just wanted a job. She wanted to be involved with the whole thing.
Well, that's how she inserted herself in the middle of the thing and saw a chance to be on television. But yeah, their original investors had conned them with information and inflated the numbers. So they thought they were doing better than they were. And they had gone to her for PR for her firm in Nashville or whatever, advertising. But when they brought up in conversation with her that, yeah, geez, our investors are screwy and we may be in trouble here with this. That's when they found out her father was a goddamn multi-millionaire Texas oil man. And that's when she said, oh, maybe my dad would be interested. They're like, who? What? There you go. Well.
Like you said, something we will come back to. Your notes, not just from TNA, but you have found all sorts of notes, and we will.
Yes, I've got. We could